So tell us who you are, please.
My name is Jessica Sanchez. I'm 29 years old and I sing.
She was just a teenager when her voice sent shockwaves through millions of living rooms across America. With a powerhouse vocal range far beyond her years and a stage presence that had even the toughest judges stunned, Jessica Sanchez was widely expected to become the next big name in pop and R&B. But while most people still remember her unforgettable run on American Idol, what they don't realize is how quickly that momentum faded once the cameras stopped rolling. In an industry that can elevate someone to stardom overnight and then just as swiftly forget their name, Jessica's story became one of unexpected disappearances, whispered rumors, and a confusing silence that left even her most loyal fans asking the same question: what really happened to Jessica Sanchez? When Jessica Sanchez first stepped onto the American Idol stage in 2012, few could have predicted how quickly she'd capture the nation's attention. Barely 16 years old, she delivered a jaw-dropping rendition of "I Will Always Love You" that had judges and fans alike proclaiming her a once-in-a-generation talent. Week after week, she stunned the audience with powerhouse performances that consistently landed her among the frontrunners. By the time she reached the finals, Jessica had already built a devoted fan base, and her second-place finish behind Philip Phillips was met with both celebration and controversy. Many believed she had been robbed of the crown. The buzz didn't stop there. Within weeks, Jessica was offered a record deal, invited to perform at high-profile events, and even sang at the National Memorial Day concert in Washington, D.C., watched by millions. Everything pointed to a meteoric rise, the kind of overnight transformation from small-town teenager to global superstar that only reality TV can manufacture. But then something strange happened. The spotlight that had once burned so brightly began to dim. Jessica's debut album, Me, You and the Music, released in 2013, came and went with little fanfare. Despite the support of major producers and a respectable launch, singles failed to chart meaningfully, promotional appearances slowed, and social media activity grew sparse. For someone once hailed as the next Beyoncé or Mariah Carey, her sudden absence from headlines was baffling. Fans speculated that she was simply taking time to grow or evolve artistically, but behind the scenes, the shift was more complex. The promising young star who once graced stages with unshakable confidence was now grappling with the first signs that the industry that welcomed her so enthusiastically might not be as supportive as it seemed. And that was only the beginning. What many fans didn't see was how Jessica Sanchez's music career became entangled in a maze of corporate expectations, conflicting visions, and creative restraints almost immediately after her time on American Idol ended. Though her signing with Interscope Records was initially seen as a major win, especially with heavyweight producers like Toby Gad and Will.i.am attached to her debut project, Jessica quickly learned that having a label's backing didn't always mean having their full belief. Behind closed doors, her vision for authentic, emotionally driven ballads clashed with the label's desire for polished, radio-friendly hits that fit into whatever was trending at the moment. The result was an album that, while technically solid, felt disconnected from the raw power that had once made her performances so unforgettable. Jessica herself would later hint in interviews that she didn't feel fully in control of the sound she was putting out, saying she often felt like she was being molded into something she wasn't. Tracks were chosen without her full input, and artistic freedom was quietly stripped away in favor of safe, market-tested material. Meanwhile, internal restructuring at the label and shifting industry priorities meant that promotional efforts were scattershot and underfunded. Promises made during her Idol days began to dissolve, and as momentum slowed, so did opportunities. To make matters worse, Jessica found herself pigeonholed, not quite pop enough for mainstream radio, not edgy enough for R&B, and too seasoned for the teen idol space, despite her young age. The very traits that once made her unique had become career obstacles. In an industry where timing and positioning are everything, Jessica's post-idol moment had arrived with fanfare, but fizzled under pressure. She wasn't dropped, but she wasn't being pushed either. It was a limbo few artists escaped from, and the frustration of being shelved while trying to evolve became a recurring theme in her interviews. Still, despite these growing pains, Jessica wasn't ready to walk away. She had other plans, but the road ahead would only grow more complicated. As the public waited for Jessica Sanchez to make her next big move, what emerged instead was a confusing trail of silence, speculation, and subtle controversy that left fans guessing. Social media, once a lively outlet where she connected with her supporters, grew strangely quiet. When she did post, it often carried a cryptic tone, melancholy captions, vague reflections, and occasional lyrics hinting at deeper emotional struggles. The absence of new music or high-profile appearances sparked whispers online. Was she battling something behind the scenes? Had the pressure become too much? And then came the rumors, first mild, then darker. Some followers speculated that she was facing mental health challenges, possibly the result of burnout after being thrust so quickly into the spotlight at such a young age. Others wondered aloud if personal struggles, perhaps involving heartbreak or family issues, had driven her to retreat. Unconfirmed stories even began circulating about strained relationships with former mentors, canceled gigs, and unreleased music trapped behind legal walls. At one point, a tweet from a fan asking if Jessica had disappeared for good went viral, and the silence that followed only deepened the mystery. Meanwhile, tabloids and pop culture blogs began floating more sensational theories, suggesting possible substance use or emotional breakdowns, always couched in vague language, never citing sources. While none of these claims were ever confirmed, they planted enough doubt to keep curiosity simmering. Jessica herself rarely addressed these narratives directly, which only fueled further intrigue. The few interviews she granted during this period revealed a more guarded, reflective version of the confident teenager America had once cheered for. She spoke cautiously about fame, hinted at broken promises, and suggested that being true to herself had come at a price. What was clear, even without confirmation, was that the bubbly Idol finalist had endured something that changed not just her career, but the way she saw herself in the public eye. And just when it seemed like her voice had been lost in the chaos, Jessica took an unexpected step toward reclaiming her identity. While Jessica Sanchez fought to reclaim her musical voice, another storm brewed quietly in the background, one that involved mounting financial strain and behind-the-scenes legal entanglements that threatened to derail everything she was working toward. Though never openly addressed in public, reports began surfacing from industry insiders and online sleuths suggesting that Jessica had struggled to maintain the financial rewards of her early success. Despite performing on one of television's biggest stages and touring in its aftermath, her earnings, like many reality TV stars, were subject to heavy contractual cuts, management fees, and inconsistent payouts. It didn't help that her debut album underperformed commercially, reportedly failing to recoup its production and promotion costs. Rumors emerged about unpaid taxes and frozen royalties, with speculation that early business deals may have left her locked into restrictive arrangements with little financial flexibility. Several sources claimed Jessica had attempted to renegotiate her contracts or sever ties with certain managers, but found herself bound by complex legal agreements. These behind-the-scenes battles rarely made headlines, yet they reportedly took a toll on her emotionally and creatively. Fans noticed how her output slowed again after short bursts of activity, songs teased but never released, promised projects that vanished from her socials without explanation. Some interpreted this as a lack of consistency, but others began to realize she was likely facing issues far beyond just writer's block. In interviews where money was mentioned, Jessica dodged specifics but hinted at the realities of sustaining a career without label funding, telling one outlet that doing it independently is empowering but also expensive. Behind the confident tone lay a hard truth. Rebuilding her career without institutional support meant bearing all the risks herself. Merchandise drops and private gigs helped, but it wasn't enough to fully restart the machine. And as whispers of legal battles over intellectual property floated through fan forums and industry circles, one thing became clear. Jessica Sanchez's greatest obstacle wasn't her talent or even her relevance. It was a system that had once welcomed her in and now seemed determined to keep her boxed out. Still, just as many began to lose hope, Jessica pulled off a move no one expected. She went international. Just when it seemed like Jessica Sanchez had been pushed to the margins of the American music industry, she made a bold pivot, one that would unexpectedly reignite her career thousands of miles from the spotlight that first made her famous. Drawing on her Filipino-Mexican heritage, Jessica began connecting with fans in Southeast Asia, particularly in the Philippines, where her performances were met with overwhelming enthusiasm. What mainstream U.S. radio had sidelined, Filipino audiences embraced with open arms. Her live vocals, stage presence, and cultural pride struck a powerful chord. Invitations poured in from television networks, music festivals, and even diplomatic events. Suddenly, Jessica wasn't just performing, she was representing. She appeared on popular Filipino shows like ASAP and Eat Bulaga, collaborated with local artists, and headlined concerts that sold out within hours. Her song Lead Me Home became an anthem among overseas Filipino communities, and her name became a staple in Southeast Asian entertainment headlines. The shift wasn't just geographic, it was deeply personal. For the first time in years, Jessica seemed comfortable, empowered, and creatively free. She began blending Tagalog lyrics into her songs, experimenting with traditional sounds, and aligning her identity with a cultural movement that celebrated her roots rather than asking her to dilute them. In interviews, she spoke of feeling seen and heard in a way that had eluded her in the US, and the numbers backed it up. Her social media following skyrocketed, and her videos racked up millions of views across platforms. She even found herself on the shortlist for ambassadorships and charity campaigns, becoming a figure of pride for bicultural youth across the globe. But while her star rose abroad, the American media barely took notice. Her name trended on Filipino Twitter, yet remained absent from Billboard. Critics in the States often failed to acknowledge this second act, framing her career as a cautionary tale of what could have been. In truth, Jessica had rewritten the narrative. She wasn't chasing a comeback, she was building a new empire. Yet even as her overseas success flourished, questions still lingered back home. Why had she never fully returned to American fame? What forces were still holding her back, and what secrets remained buried beneath the surface? In recent years, Jessica Sanchez has maintained a delicate balance between presence and mystery, emerging just often enough to spark conversation, yet elusive enough to keep the public wondering. While her international popularity remains strong, particularly in the Philippines and among the diaspora, her absence from the American mainstream continues to fuel a steady stream of speculation. Fans often ask why she hasn't made a full-scale return to US airwaves, especially given the resurgence of other American Idol alumni. Some believe the answer lies in choice. Jessica may have found more fulfillment crafting her own path without the pressures and compromises of the traditional music machine, but others point to lingering industry politics and unresolved legal barriers that may still be limiting her options. Online forums and fan accounts have dissected every Instagram post, TikTok snippet, and interview for clues. A recent social media video where Jessica hinted at letting go of what no longer serves me set off waves of rumors, some suggesting a final break with past management, others claiming she's working on a tell-all documentary. Her romantic life, long kept private, also stirs speculation. She's been linked to a few artists and influencers, but nothing confirmed. The lack of clear answers only deepens public curiosity. What's undeniable, though, is that Jessica hasn't stopped creating. In the last year alone, she's released several singles independently, including collaborations with up-and-coming international producers. Her sound continues to evolve, more experimental, more vulnerable, and unbothered by traditional genre boundaries. One track, Tired, tackled themes of emotional exhaustion and quiet resilience, resonating deeply with listeners who followed her since her Idol days. Despite minimal promotion, it gained traction on streaming platforms, suggesting her audience is still very much listening. Jessica has also teased a return to the stage, with whispers of an upcoming international tour and interest from Netflix-style platforms for a possible documentary or special. Still, the big question remains, will she ever fully return to the American spotlight? Or has she chosen a quieter, more deliberate kind of legacy, one built not on fame, but on freedom? With every cryptic caption and soft-spoken release, Jessica continues to challenge the expectations once placed upon her. And the truth is, no one really knows what she'll do next, but that uncertainty may be her greatest power yet. Jessica Sanchez's journey is far more than a story of a young talent fading from the spotlight. It's a revealing lens into the cost of early fame, the complexities of the music industry, and the quiet strength required to survive it all. What began as a fairy tale moment on national television quickly spiraled into a maze of creative compromises, contract disputes, and silent battles that very few fans ever witnessed. Yet despite every setback, Jessica never truly disappeared. She transformed. While her name may no longer trend weekly on American entertainment shows, her voice continues to echo through stages around the world, in songs written with unfiltered honesty, and in a fan base that has grown more loyal with time. In many ways, she represents a new kind of artist, one who refuses to be defined by commercial charts or industry validation, and instead chooses purpose over popularity. Her detour into international stardom, her quiet resilience amid legal and financial hurdles, and her ongoing redefinition of success tell a far more powerful story than any headline could. Jessica Sanchez may not have followed the path people expected, but she never stopped walking forward. And in a world obsessed with instant fame and constant visibility, perhaps the most remarkable thing about her is that she chose something different: authenticity. Whether she steps back into the American limelight or continues forging her own global path, one thing is certain: Jessica Sanchez didn't vanish, she evolved. And for those still listening, her story isn't over. In fact, it may have only just begun.